Well, we found it after a little bit of run around. Right for the neutral zone. Right here at the Kingsland self-storage. It's not off the road they say it's off of, just curiosity.
Yeah, you have to kind of look at the map.
Or the neutral zone van. Everything's in that van. I won't do much talking because I don't want to make it seem, awkward to these people. There's somebody up there with a Star Trek shirt on, so I feel I missed out bringing my board costume.
Unfortunately, they wish me for the 4:30, but I'll mark in on some of the. Yeah, thank you.
We were hoping to go put together. And I said, and he said, you gotta come down to the river, you gotta go down to the riverside for the festival. So we went down there, and on the way down, I said, well, the one thing I want to see is the cliff where he drove the car off the side. He said, there's no such thing like that.
They're almost done cleaning the bridge. But by the time we get there, it'll be brand spanking clean.
Clean. There you go.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, easy for you to say.
It's been a long day, so
Yeah, I bet so. You guys been
it's
working
hard to
hard.
put words together. Welcome to neutral zone, and I think except for one person, everybody here is new, right? I think we have one person. Where you are, what this is, what you're going to see. I mentioned before, I'm Ray Tessie, I'm the set owner. I'm going to do your tour, okay? But you are standing backstage at a live film studio. We've done over 40 productions here. Mostly, and if you look behind you, if you're familiar, anybody here familiar with Star Trek Continues? Okay, so mostly Star Trek Continues is what's known for here. It actually started about 13 or 14 years ago at a much smaller building in St. Mary's down the road. And it was a production called Starship Farragut.
We watched that too.
Okay, so Farragut started there when they did their first film. Vic Mignogna, and if you know Continues, Vic is the executive producer, he's Captain Kirk, right? So Vic actually helped them with that production. Right after that production was done, because they were in that building gratis from the landlord sold the building. So they were talking about moving what they had, which was part of the bridge, a smaller transporter room, a little bit of a corridor, I think a little bit of sickbay. They were talking about putting that in storage. And Vic said, hey, look, if we can find a bigger building, let's move what we've got and build around it. And that's right up to the door. Everybody get behind her so you can see what's going on. Everybody come on over.
And I built all this by myself. No, me and one other guy.
So here's what I want to do. I'm going to use you.
Okay.
All right? And your name is?
Julie.
Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
So in the production, you needed to give a cue to open the doors, because if you can imagine William Shatner running towards the door, you've seen him, right? Okay. So they would give a cue.
Okay.
Back in 1960. Oh, by the way, I should mention, even before we get started, everything you see is built based on the blueprints from 1966. Okay, so you're going to be walking into a television set. Okay, but you needed to give a cue. Back in 1966, where they had a lot of room and a lot of whatever, they would have a light on the wall. So when the light lit, the guy behind the scenes, somebody like Sam, would know that it was time to open the doors and let actors through. STC didn't have that luxury, so they picked a very complicated way to control the doors. And that's that the director would go, doors. Okay? So Julie, you are going to be the director, and whenever you're ready, you're going to give the cue.
Doors!
Oh, yes.
Oh my God!
The engine room, that is so cool.
Everybody come on all the way in.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God!
Everybody all the way in.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there is a triple.
Please feel free to take pictures. You can post them online. Only thing I would ask is tag us so that we know that you were here, okay? And if anybody has any question whatsoever, please ask, okay? So let's talk a little bit about engineering. It may look a little small when you walk in, but it's actually built to scale. The wall behind you wasn't there. That was a completely open area. That's where the camera people would be, the writers, the directors, all the people would be there. On the other side of that now is a machine that makes egg rolls. So that had to be cut off. But the building owner and the egg roll people allowed them to keep this because, as I said, this doesn't exist anywhere else. Okay? First thing that probably catches your eye is the warp core. Okay? The warp core is built using a process called forced perspective. And what that means is, as items get further and further back, they actually get smaller. The pieces get smaller, the letters, the numbers, everything gets smaller, and it gives the illusion of depth. So a lot of people will come here and think it's 20 feet, 25 feet, it's 12 feet. That's all it is 12 feet. But it looks like it goes back much further.
Sure does.
Okay? Some of the things that we're going to look at are still being manufactured today, as they were in 1966. Yeah. There you go. They're manufactured the way they were in 1966. Some things just don't exist anymore. So there had to be ways to find out how to manufacture them, how to find them, how to make them, and we're going to talk about all of that. Something that still exists is this. This is very, very heavy metal. Exactly what they used in the original series. And if you look at the original series, you'll notice that in here in the corners, there are these little tabs. And when this is actually purchased, those tabs are out. But in Star Trek, those tabs were recessed. So if you can imagine people driving themselves crazy with a pair of pliers, putting those things in, that's exactly how it was done. Question is, what is it? If it's still manufactured today, what is it? You can see it also behind you in red, and you'll see it in a couple of other places along the way as well. Okay? These hexagonal shapes are used in large concrete builds, and it causes reinforcement between the concrete. So if you're thinking about it, if you're making a brick or something small out of concrete, it doesn't matter. But if you're building something that's going to hold up a road structure or a highway structure, or you're building a giant column for a building, you want that to be as secure as it can. So you would put this in between the concrete. Okay? Take a look at the ceiling. Go back and look at Star Trek. That's exactly what it looks like. If you ever see a shot where they've got an up angle in engineering, that's exactly what you're going to see. True scale, right size. So, how was that built? So, when they first started construction on engineering, they used conventional methods. Wood, all kinds of different woods, ceiling. And they built one section, just a side arc. And immediately they realized it was going to be too heavy. It's going to be too heavy. So how do you get it up there? How do you secure it securely? And how do you keep it from falling? Because if it ever fell, we'd all be...
You lost Bobby.
We'd be gone, right? So, one of the fellows that's not here is Will Weaver. I said, Sam has been here since 2010. Royal's been here since 2000. If you could make, now remember, this is going back to 2015, 16, right? A little different than today. But if you could make anything on computer as a 3D CAD model, this guy could cut it perfectly in the size to exact specifications out of styrofoam.
Yes.
So, if this ceiling ever was taken down, you and I could carry it out. It's just that way. It's just that way.
Wow.
Okay? And not surprisingly, that person was dubbed Foam Man. Okay? Well, once they realized they can make that out of foam, they realized they can make a lot of things out of foam. Things you can't find anymore. Right? So, for example, if you look at all, by the way, these we call them, I don't know if this is the right name for it, but all of these things you see are called plantons. Plantons. Why? Because you plant them on the wall. Okay, they're plantons. All of the things you see here, even this snaky thing, these conduits, these were all made out of styrofoam using 3D CAD models. Okay? If you go back and look at Star Trek, and you look at this upper level, you'll see exactly that. Because what they did was take a lot of screenshots, worked very hard to really try to recreate the look. And so it's going to look exactly like what you see.
So these rails strong enough for people to climb up?
Don't climb.
He's asking what we all want to know.
That's right. Yes, they are.
So they're obviously not made
They're not made out of foam. We're going to talk about the stairs, the ladder in a second. By the way, nothing works, right? Nothing works. And we'll talk about movie magic in a minute. So I can't beam you home. I'm sorry. It was tougher in the winter because I couldn't beam people home in the snow. So, as I said, a lot of these items that you see are no longer being manufactured, right? So, for example, these pieces that are here on the wall, right? Does anybody have any? This is really the heart of the studio. Okay, this is the heart of the studio. And as I mentioned, when these doors open, we hope that you guys are just gonna fall in love with what you see. Okay? So, Julie, whenever you're ready.
Doors.
Look at that. Everybody walk up to the red line. Everybody up to the red line. So, here you all are inside the Enterprise. You'll notice that the corridor makes a turn, just like the original series. That was designed that way because the upper section of the starship is supposed to be round, so it needed to give the illusion that they were walking in a large circle wherever they could. The way this was actually designed was that Vic had come here. This was nothing but a slab of concrete, and he took the blueprints and cans of spray paint and said, okay, we're going to put a wall over here, and that's where it should branch off. We're going to put a wall over here, and then they began construction around that. Movie magic. Plantons, we're going to talk about them a little later, but you're going to see plantons everywhere. You see these things, right? Kind of looks like what was in Star Trek. You can stay there.
Yeah, it's okay.
Kind of looks like what was in Star Trek, okay? First thing is, does anybody recognize that? Lampshade. Lampshade, okay? However, just like in the original series, they moved things around as they needed to because it didn't matter to them. Nobody knew that somebody was going to be watching it 54 years later, right? So they would just make things so that they could be moved, like this. So if we're filming something down the other end of the hallway and we want something to give a different look, then we take it and we move it. So, something to mention, I mentioned that it was built on the same footprint as Paramount. Couple of differences. This section and that way would have been Dr. McCoy's office and the labs. We didn't have the same budget. Star Trek Continues didn't have the same budget as Paramount, so they only built sets as needed. Never had an episode that needed Dr. McCoy's office or the lab, so they never built it. But this becomes very valuable space because if you need to make something else, you need a place to put it, okay? However, if you walk in and you go left, you're going to be in Sickbay. Come on all the way in. And again, you're free to take pictures. Going to be talking about the fabric. Going to be talking about the room. Fabric is not manufactured anymore. Not manufactured. The fabric that was the closest that they found, you'll see under this cryo tube. Not the same. Not that bright. Not that gold. Not that red. Okay? So, how did they get this? Well, again, thanks to Vic, he took screenshots from the original series. And he found a fabricator. And said, can you make this? And he took a couple of tries, and he made this, which you're going to see all through the sets, and made reams of it. Made reams of it. So every place you see this is from that fabricator. We know that Star Trek led to a lot of things that are happening today, okay? We used to walk around with our communicator, now we walk around with our tricorder, okay? I mean, we all know these things, right? The cell phone, the whole 9 yards. So, believe it or not, this technology didn't exist. Most of the technology never existed. In fact, we didn't talk about the sliding doors, right? Little story, the people from Otis Elevator visited Paramount in the 60s and said, we want your technology for opening the doors. Hang on one second, my wife is flying into the doors. There was a guy pulling, no, we want to know how they open, because you probably say, well, we have automated doors. I saw it yesterday at Target, right? When you walk in. But that didn't exist. So they had to figure out ways to make things look like the future, okay? And when we get probably to our next set, we're going to talk a little bit about why they came up with those ideas. And I'll tell you right now, the overwhelming reason was to save money. Save money, okay? But this technology is just becoming real. A person would lay down on a medical cot, okay? That beam would turn on, and all of the readings would then appear above the patient. And that's actually something that has been developed. I don't know that it's in practice yet, but we've read about it in the last several months or 6 months. You'll notice that ours is just a static screen. And if we're filming something in Sickbay, then we all have a joke that we say we fix it in post-editing, okay, post-processing. And so we CGI in it. Back in 1966, there was some poor schlep going. That's how they did it. That's how they did it. And he's aged. He's not only passed through another dimension, he's passed through time. And the computer, because he was the only one left, if you remember the episode Building and Web, the computer kept him alive by putting him in here. Let everybody in. Come on in. Come on in. So, a few things about the transporter run. One question is, so this is built to scale. One question is, even by looking at blueprints, how do you know what size things are, right? So you need to look at the original series, you need to look at screen caps and things like that, and then try to figure out what a central dimension is. And if you can figure out what that dimension is, you can then calculate everything else. So, has anybody here ever done construction? Construction? A little bit? Okay. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you buy a piece, right? 1966, cameras were huge.
Yes, they were.
Okay?
Yes.
The screen lighting, that's exactly right. Say it again.
Fresnel lenses.
Fresnel lenses.
Of course.
And if you think about it, back in Paramount, you had hundreds on set. So they lifted 6 of them. They built them so that they would be sturdy. And they put those lenses in place. Well, you can still find Fresnel lenses, but they're very expensive. And there are a lot less of them than there were back then, 50 years ago. They do. So, beaming in and beaming out. Right? And if anybody else wants to go up there while I'm talking,
I definitely
it's
want
better
to do
than
that.
listening to
Somebody
me.
else may get a picture?
It's going to be too costly. Well, what if we could make a way to get people from
And
here
they
to
would
there?
throw down some cards, deck of cards, some drinks. You put a food processor on that wall right there, maybe a little 3-dimensional chess, right? Boom, it's another room. Because that's how you save money. You don't build. Thank you! It's magic. Who did that? Is that you, Sam? Yep. I love you. Well, I didn't until you said that. Thank you. So they were always looking for ways they could repurpose rooms that they'd already built. Anybody remember the episode where Kirk was performing a wedding at the beginning of the episode? Yeah. Balance of Terror? Yeah. This was the wedding chapel. They put a wall over this door, and then they put a little platform right here, and Kirk stood here with a little podium, and then they put little benches out there. And the crew sat on the benches, and they put a door in that wall right there. Because the door flats they're just separate flats. So that they could put them in any different order to make a completely different setup. So this was the wedding chapel as well. They repurposed engineering for the gymnasium. Remember in Charlie X when they were flipping around and showing them moves and stuff? That was engineering. They just took the things took that big thing off the middle of the floor, put up a couple of walls to cover things, make it look different. Now, I don't know if he told you this, but every room in a soundstage, in a movie set, has one wall missing. There's usually one wall gone. Because your crew, your camera, your lighting, they have to be somewhere shooting into the set. So if all 4 walls are closed in, you can never get far enough away to shoot big cover shots of the whole room. In this room, this wall would normally never be here. You go back and look at your Star Trek books, any stills you see of the briefing room are out here looking in this way. Because you get the arches, the table, the entrance, you see everything. In fact, they would shoot what's called a master shot. Every scene, there's a master shot. If you're lucky, you would shoot a master shot. And what the master shot is, it's a camera position that captures everything in the scene in one camera angle. Obviously, you need to be far enough away to see everything. So there always would be areas in every set where there would be one wall gone. This would normally be one here. The only time they would put this in is if the camera, for whatever reason, needed to reverse shoot this way. So like if there's somebody sitting at that end of the table and you need a close-up of him, you throw that wall in place. But this wall is just...
You didn't take that one out on the other side.
No. We built this for our 3rd episode. Have any of you seen Star Trek Continues?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. And so you remember in our 3rd episode, Mr. Spock and Scotty took over the Enterprise from auxiliary control. This is the set. So we built this for our 3rd episode. And now here's something interesting I want to share with you. This is what we call our swing set area. In other words, you build what you need for a given episode, and then you tear it down to build what you need for the next one. So, in our second episode, Lolani, with Lou Ferrigno.
Yep. What's that?
This was Lolani's quarters, right in here. Her bed was back there. This wasn't here. And that table was there. But this, right here is where I kicked Lou Ferrigno in the chest, right there. And then every episode you need some set that you don't need all the time. Maybe you need a Commodore's office. Maybe you need a Starfleet headquarters office. Maybe you need an alien council chamber. So every episode might call for a set that you don't normally need. So you have to have space to build those sets. And this was our area. This was Aaron Gray's office. You remember in the episode when they were going to give Spock command of the hood, and that woman contacted him and said she wanted it. So they had the trial. We had the courtroom here. Well, we had to build her office. So we built this, or we used this actually because we had it from Ox Control. But we put her desk here, got that out of here, put a couple of chairs, we put a wall across here, because obviously you wouldn't want to see all this. And then it was actually that wall that we put here, because it had a big picture window in it. So this was a window, and then we had green screen behind it, so we would project the starbase out the back. So we would repurpose this area. You remember the episode of ours when Kirk and Scotty were delivering that planetary defense shield device, and Kirk got hit over the head at the very beginning. Colin Baker from Doctor Who was the council leader. Well, we shot that right here. Now, obviously, we didn't want it to look like this because this says Enterprise. So we draped curtains all around, and then we put tile on the floor so it wouldn't be the same gray carpet on the ship. And then we made up a logo and we hung it in front of the curtain. Boom, Alien Council Chamber. And you would have certain knickknacks and mementos sitting on the shelf. Obviously, this is not Kirk's quarters. If you saw the nameplate on the wall coming in, this is Captain April's quarters. Whoever that is, and whatever he has in his quarters.
First captain of the Enterprise.
Right, but this is not Kirk stuff. But now when it was Spock's quarters, the table went over there, the bed came over here, they hung red curtains around here, and they hung things in front of the curtains, like, mementos and stuff. Suddenly it's a different cabin. You don't build separate sets for every actor, you just redress them. Notice the Sickbay fabric again, they used it all the time, even on the wall. And there.
Oh my goodness.
We completely recreated those.
Oh.
Now the reason I did that, okay, now that I pointed that out, I'm going to tell you why I did that. Okay, so where would you shoot the master shot? Which wall would be missing here to look into this room?
That's too small, so you'd have to.
That one. Oh, this wall would never be here. The camera would be back there, and from back there you can see everything in the room. Okay? The reason we put it up is for tours, but it would not normally be there. Okay. Now, this is a small set, obviously. And some walls are harder to take out than others. So what if we need a shot? Let's say you're Captain Kirk. Have a seat in that chair. And I'm Mr. Spock. And I come in to talk to you, right? Come. And I walk in the door, right? And I want the camera. Here, let me sneak around behind you. I want the camera here. So you see Kirk in the foreground, and Kirk and Spock walk in the door, right? And all in one shot. You see the problem. There's a wall here. I can't get the camera far enough away to get that shot. Unless, of course, you cut a port in the wall. So all we do is take this out, shoot the shot, and then just cover back up. And by the way, that's what they did in the original series as well. That back there, behind that picture, is a camera port. Because what if you need to shoot this direction? You'd have to be able to get the camera back there, and you've only got so much space with the walls, the fixed walls where they are. See that we actually did make this our hangar deck. So that's the entrance to the hangar deck. There's even the compression chamber here on the left. Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Come here a second. Do me a favor, would you? Come here, buddy. See all this stuff right here? Yeah. Would you just tuck it away somewhere? I don't know. Like, somewhere that Well,
Just bumped into something.
Keep it shaped. And then there's a platform up at the top because you got to get that shot looking down, right, where Scotty's up there working on stuff. And then Scotty's going to get up there and you build the steps, and they can't just look right, they need to be functional. You climb up, right? These plantons, we call them plantons because the name says it all, right? They, I heard you told you about design, right? Things on the wall. Who cares where they work? They're just so everything you see is meant to break up the wall. Break wall. This thing right here. I made this before we ever shot our first episode, and you're not supposed to look closely at it because the story's the thing. That's just background. If you're really looking at stuff like that, then the actors aren't doing their job, right? But if you take a look at it closely, you'll see that there's a little tiny paint tray, and there's a wheel from a chair, and a bunch of electrical pieces and plumbing parts, which is, again, that fun movie magic where you take stuff, and this is what Star Trek did, take stuff that already exists, that's common, and repurpose it in some way to make it something different. Okay, you guys ready? Can't stand it.
We gotta get into the turbo.
And there's the turbo lift. And that's one of them. There's one at both ends normally, but of course, we have sets to build one on the other end, but we don't have them set up. And again, now look how small the turbo lift is. How do you shoot a scene in the turbo lift? Like if Kirk and Spock are in here, where's the camera gonna go? This green wall would be gone. So you would shoot in from, there would always be some wall missing.
Sorry.
You know what I was thinking about? Okay, in the 60s, there was no such thing as a force field, right? If you put you in a jail, there are bars, right? Well, this is imagining something for the future, right? Back in the 60s, like, what if there was some invisible energy field, right, that kept you from getting out? So it's a cool futuristic idea, but not only that, you can take a camera shot and whoever's in the brig is completely not blocked at all by bars or doors. So it works well, not only as a cool futuristic idea, but also as oh, that's fine. Oh, and this is where engineering would normally be. You see the sign? Did he tell you that?
No.
Okay, there are only two ways that this set is different from the original soundstage. The first way was what I told you about McCoy's office and stuff. We just didn't need them, so we didn't build them. The other way is engineering, that it's different. Now, I will tell you there's only one thing missing, and we'll see if you can figure out what it is. You ready? Come on in. This is the best part. It's not a TV show. You can walk right into it.
I like watching this part.
And there is the beauty right there.
Oh, wet.
Yeah, we're just still painting. I mean, that's how close we're going. Now, the only thing that is missing right now, there's still some adjustments. Like you can see that that edge down there still needs to be finished off. But I mean, we were cleaning up as you were starting the tour. The only thing that still needs to be done is the amazing Ralph Miller, who has supervised this project, needs to put that blue glowing trim around it. And if you look closely, there's some of it right there. He hasn't been able to get to the rest of it yet. But he will. Beautiful.
Yes!
Isn't it amazing?
It is.
Well, come on in, walk around. Like I said, the coolest thing is you don't have to stand at a distance and look at it, you know? I told you about the rocker switches. Look at every station. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Look, Spock's got 2 sets. Okay? And they're all fake, except for helm and navigation. These are actual rocker switches And look, I can even turn stuff on. Look, red alert. I can turn his stuff on here.
That is.
I can turn this on. And Chekhov gets to turn on the, or excuse me, Sulu gets to turn on the astrogator. And his own controls here.
That is so cool.
I need to get my happen in the cabin.
Yeah, you do. Get out here. Does anyone have any questions at all?
Support.
Yes, there it is. Exactly. Look at all the space.
Is that the red alert?
Yep.
I don't know. I certainly didn't do it.
Yeah, that,
Yep, that was us.
That's pretty good though. You can get it from the bridge. Now, you guys, let me tell you a couple of things real quick before I let you loose. Again, they look for ways to save money. Use what already exists if you possibly can. So, I don't know if he told you about the chairs. You notice that the chairs in the briefing room were just standard molded plastic chairs. They were not Star Trek chairs. These are Star Trek chairs. Now, these were still just molded plastic chairs by a company called Burke. They were standard in the 60s, and all Star Trek did was bought 9 or 10 of them.
Oh.
And then they made a leather cushion, and then they shaved down the back and made a leather back, and then they painted them blue, baby blue, and then they put these little weird triangles on the back. And suddenly, you have a Star Trek chair. The captain's chair. If you look at this closely, and then when you go home, I want you to Google search Madison office chair.
So we can have one of these at home.
Yes, this actual leather chair, the center chair section with the wooden armrests, was an executive office chair made by a company called Madison, and they just bought one, and then they designed this cradle around it to put all different controls and stuff on it to make it look futuristic. In fact, they even put it on. I was told this was like a drum. A drum that they put it on so that it could swivel around. But just a couple, again, an existing thing is just a couple of minor adjustments to make it seem futuristic.
That's wild.
It's real. It's not made up, it's real. I'm with you, girl. I am so with you. Hey, watch you guys watch the black trim over there. It was painted recently. I hope it's dry, but I'm not sure.
Have you guys updated anything since you finished filming?
No. In fact, we never had the view screen. Our view screen shots in our series were CGI. We always meant. Oh, by the way, guys, let me just tell you something.
Excuse me.
This whole section right here, from here over, was not here. Because remember what I told you. You got to have open space. If you want to get a big wide shot of the bridge, it was always my desire to finish the original 5-year mission. And we had wanted to maybe make 13 episodes, maybe 15. And of course, some things happened, and I don't even like to get into that, but CBS, basically said, look, they could have said, and this is why I really want to give them kudos. They could have said, hey, you're done. Stop now, or we'll sue. And we wouldn't have been able to finish. But we were on our 7th episode, you guys. The courtroom drama episode. When they called me and said, we know that you were planning on finishing the series. How many you want to do? And I said, well, we'd like to do 13. And this lawyer from CBS said, yeah, no, probably not 13. How fast can you finish it up? How fast can you wrap it up? But the point was, they let us wrap it up. So we went into high gear and shot 4 episodes in 1 year. 8, 9, 10, 11. And I mean, it was a nightmare. Because these are all volunteers. We're not a Hollywood soundstage or the production company with 50 professionals being paid to crank these out every week. So we came down here 4 times. In fact, the 8th episode with Old Kirk, remember they found Old Kirk on the Defiant? We realized that if we were going to be able to shoot that episode, it was going to have to be in August. Yeah, can you feel it? We couldn't have done it physically. Like, people would pass out. There's no air conditioning in this room. People would have passed out. And I had that horrible prosthetic on, and the uniforms are kind of thick and they don't breathe well. So we're like, okay, if we want to shoot an episode, it's got to be in August. What do we do? See that conduit hanging above the set?
Yeah.
We rented an air conditioning unit about the size of a van that parked outside this garage door right here and pumped air in here overnight and got it to about 65 degrees in here in the morning. And it was beautiful. I mean, because it was 102 outside, and we'd come in here and be like, oh, this is so great. And we'd shoot until noon, and we'd take a lunch break, and we'd pump the air in again, because you can't have it running when you're shooting for sound purposes. But that was the only way we were able to get that episode shot, which allowed us to get 11 done. But we finished the most iconic show in television history that never had an ending. And you know, next time you saw Kirk and Spock and those guys was in the motion picture. 10 years later. So what the heck happened? So it was our desire to kind of fill that gap.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right.
We're all like walking away, but we don't want to walk away. I know.
Well, I'm sure you'll enjoy these. So glad you're here. Make sure you guys tell people that this place exists. We would love to. Because they rely on word of mouth just to let people know about it. I do it every month. From the first time to 5,000 times. Cool, you know? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, thanks for being here. Yeah, she'll take care of you.